Hi, I'm Sarah Ryan, owner of Beachwood Equine. I'm a registered equine massage therapist, and I'm also training to become a registered massage therapist. So today we're going to talk about stretching the horse. So I've got Olson back here to help me out with some of these, but before we get to that, we're going to first talk about what stretching is. So stretching is when you take a muscle or a set of muscles beyond its outer range of motion while staying in a pain-free range. The stretch is held long enough for the muscle fibers to relax and prevents tension and adhesions from forming. Adhesions are kind of like, if you picture saran wrap getting like balled up, that's kind of like a knot in like a necklace, chain of your necklace. That's kind of what an adhesion is like, forming in the muscle. It's just like a bunch of the muscle fibers getting all jumbled together out of alignment, and that's when you get that sore knot that you can sometimes feel when you touch your own muscles. So horses get these too, and stretching is something we can do to help prevent these, decrease them, and help get rid of them. So first of all, there's a couple different goals here that we need to. So first we're going to talk about stretching protocol and how it works. So there's two different types of cells in the muscle that detect muscle length and function. So first one is the muscle spindle. This one detects muscle length, and it's located in the belly of the muscle. So we're going to, for example, if we're looking here at Olson's longissimus, the belly of the muscle is kind of like this middle part, or a better one might be the triceps, this nice meaty muscle part here. I don't think you can see. So we're talking about the muscle belly, so that's more of the meaty part. On either end of the muscle belly or around it, how it attaches to the body is by tendons, and this is controlled by a Golgi tendon organ, which is located in the musculotendinous junction. So that's where the tendon and the muscle meet, and it helps detect tone and tension. The muscle spindle helps detect muscle length. So these two cells are very important when we are considering stretching, because without them, stretching is not effective. So there's a couple different regions involved with stretching. So there's this region called the toe region. So that includes your normal movement. So for your horse, that would be walking around out in the field, coming in and out of their stall, just normal things that they do every day, eating, basic stuff like that. Next phase is the elastic region. This is a stretch without permanent change in the muscle. So you're stretching your muscle, so I'm stretching the inside of my arm here, but I'm not doing it for long enough for it to make a permanent change in my muscle length. So then that brings us next to the plastic range. This is a stretch with a permanent change in the muscle fibers. So that's when we're taking our muscles and we're stretching it for 30 to 60 seconds. This is important, and we'll get to it later about that time frame and why it's important. And then next, this is when we have to start worrying about problems, is called the necking region. This occurs at the end of the plastic region, and it's the warning sign that the muscle fiber is under too much tension and too much strain. So that's when you kind of get that burning, pain feeling in the muscle when you're stretching it. The next phase is rupture. This is when the muscle fibers tear. We don't want this because that's when you run into issues like strains, and then you get a lot of ouch. And then the final phase is failure. So that's when the muscle ruptures completely, it fails to work, it is overstretched, and you've torn the fibers completely. And that is not good, because then the muscle can no longer function the way we need it to. Benefits to stretching. The first one is to increase muscle length and therefore increase the range of motion of your horse so that it's able to perform better, able to move better, no restrictions, no short steps. That is the goal. Obviously, there may be other underlying issues that have to be looked at to take care of this to help improve your horse's performance, but that is up to you and your vet and your registered equine massage therapist. It also maintains muscle and joint health. It maintains flexibility. It can prevent injury when done after a warm-up and after a cool down. It enhances performance when done after the warm-up. Speeds healing and time after time of injury. Reduces delayed onset muscle soreness, so that's the feeling of soreness you get after working out. It realigns fibers that may have experienced micro tearing from exercise, so this is something that has to be done in order to actually build muscle strength. When we are strengthening muscles, we're undergoing micro tearing. And then adhesions also can form. So that's why we need to stretch after we work out or work our horse out to realign those fibers to prevent any tension or restrictions for building up after we've achieve those muscle tears that we want in the strengthening. There's good muscle tears and then there's bad muscle tears. The micro tearing that happens in strengthening is okay. A strain, like we mentioned earlier, in the failure and rupture phase of stretching is not good. We don't want that because that's when we run into trouble. It helps promote body symmetry, so it helps maintain muscle balance equally on both sides of the horse, and it gives the horse an overall feeling of general well-being, especially when it's used every day. So those are the benefits, the positives to stretching, and now we're going to go into some risks, safety, and contraindications. So that's when you wouldn't want to stretch. Now again, these are just examples. There's a much longer list of things, so please, please, please talk to your vet or your registered equine massage therapist before you even stretch your horse or to even think about picking up their limbs, because you need to make sure that there's no other issues, underlying problems that you could make worse. On to those risks. If done incorrectly, muscle fibers can be torn. Some stretches are done while standing behind the horse, so you need to be careful that they don't kick you while doing this. Other stretches also involve moving their limbs, so again, be very, very careful while doing this, especially if your horse isn't comfortable with its limbs being picked up. So it's also important that before you start stretching your horse, you practice just picking up your horse's limbs, making sure they're comfortable with that, making sure they respect you on the ground first. Because if your horse doesn't respect you on the ground, it is constantly pushing you around, stretching is not going to be a safe idea for either one of you. Someone is going to get hurt, you're going to hurt yourself, the horse, it's just not going to be good. So make sure you have a very respectful, quiet horse, like Olsen here, who's just in the cross ties, like, hurry up, let's get this over with. I want my stretches done. So you need to monitor the horse's behavior at all times. So that's, again, really important to make sure they're not going to go and kick you. So be watching their ears, their body language, so that they're not tensing up. Because if they tense up, that means something's wrong, something's uncomfortable. They don't like what you're doing, and you need to stop, reevaluate, and make sure they're comfortable. So it's really important here that you know your horse, you understand your horse and what their cues are like. Some other contraindications to stretching your horse is cold muscles. So that is when your horse has not been warmed up properly. So if you've just pulled them out of their stall or from the field and they haven't been walking around, you don't want to stretch their muscles because they're cold. They're not warmed up. They're not elastic enough. They're kind of stiff. So you need to get them warmed up first before you stretch them so you don't have any tearing happening. You don't want to stretch any acute conditions. That means new injuries where there's inflammation, open wounds, anything like that, any fractures. You don't want to stretch because you can make those issues worse. So if those issues are going on, you need to talk to your vet or your registered equine massage therapist first before you start stretching. Also, acute systemic infections, so that's any infection, cold, if they have a cut that got infected. So if they're on any sort of antibiotics or medications like that, that's an indication that you probably shouldn't be stretching because there's something systemically going wrong that needs to be taken care of first. Degenerative joint disease. So that's when the joints are deteriorating. You don't want to stretch because, again, you can make those things worse. Septic arthritis, open wounds, which I already mentioned, and developmental orthopedic diseases. So those are issues with their feet, their bones, all those kinds of things. Unless you've been given permission by the vet, you shouldn't stretch a horse with any sort of wonky limbs or anything going on there. So next, we're going to talk about the how-to. First, you're going to warm the horse up, so that can be done with massage, hydrotherapy, so that's like a hot or warm heating pad, some lunging or walking them for 5 to 10 minutes. Then next, put your horse in the cross ties or have someone hold the horse. Make sure the horse stays relaxed throughout the entire session. If the horse becomes uncomfortable, stop immediately and calm them down. This needs to be a positive experience for them. It should not be stressful and unpleasant. This is to help them, so it shouldn't be negative. We shouldn't have them frightened. We shouldn't want them to hate this. We should want them to enjoy this. Allow the horse to balance themselves after the limb has been picked up before starting the stretch. So don't just go into it and start reefing their leg up because they're going to fall over and they could possibly fall on you or hurt you, themselves. Anything can happen with these animals. Start and end each stretch with the limb in hoof pick position unless otherwise stated. So, hoof pick position, when you go to pick up your horse's hoof, you're going to stand facing their butt with your side next to their shoulder, your inside limb next to them. You're going to pick up their limb with your inside hand, and that is hoof pick position to start and to end. And you drop it down and step step away, making sure you're staying out from underneath their feet. You need to keep joints in proper anatomical alignment. So, we can see Olson here is standing with his legs straight. For example, his forelimb. Pretend this is his forelimb. We don't want to have it like this and then stretching. We need to keep his carpus, his knee joint, straight, so that we're not wrenching it to either side and possibly causing other issues again. You also need to support underneath the joints for the horse. So when we're doing any stretches of the limbs, we need to have a hand underneath their carpus and underneath their fetlock. So their carpus is their knee and their fetlock is their ankle. Keep your body in a safe and comfortable position at all times as well. Monitor how the horse is reacting at all times and hold the stretch for 15 to 30 seconds. If it's unhealthy tissue, so if there was a previous injury and you're stretching for that purpose, but if you're just stretching for everyday, just general well-being, then you can hold that stretch for 30 to 60 seconds. So this is important because we need to hold this stretch for that length of time in order to trick the spindles and the Golgi tendon organs into releasing and stretching and lengthening the muscles. Without that time frame, that permanent change can't happen. So we're almost like teaching the muscles, hey, go to this length by holding it. We're like, hey, go to this length. It's like working with our muscle memory in a way. Do not grab or squeeze the tendons. Support the limb by supporting the joints, like I said before. Treats can be used to encourage the horse to do some of the stretches, but again, don't do this if your horse is super food aggressive because then that's only going to make it worse. So where you should be stretching, you need good, solid footing. So in a cross-tie space on rubber mats, don't do it on cement because they can possibly slip. Don't do it in a pile of mud or a pile of poop. You can work in your arena if it's closed off and safe to do so and there's not other horses riding around. You need your area to be clutter-free so that you don't have anything to move around, anything to trip over. It needs to be well lit and at a comfortable temperature. Obviously not possible all the time because it's a barn. We don't have air conditioning or heat out here. So yeah, arena, large cross-tie stall, a large stall, or outside and in a closed area is perfectly fine for doing your stretching work. Okay, so first we're going to be starting with the atlantoaxial rotation stretch. So you're going to be standing beside the horse, placing one hand under their chin, here, and the other one on the ridge of their axis. Their axis bone is the second cervical vertebrae. Because T becomes before X, atlas is the first one, and that's how you remember which bone comes first. So cervical vertebrae number 2 is the axis. So then we're grabbing the halter underneath their horse's chin, placing one hand on C2, so that nice rigid bone, kind of like just behind where the bridle path normally is. And we're going to, for this one, do all the head stretches. So we're starting first. We're going to need them to be free from the cross ties so that we're able to move their head whichever direction we want. So we've warmed Olson up for 5 to 10 minutes, and now we're going to go into our stretches. So we're starting with the atlantoaxial rotation. I'm going to be pushing on his axis with this hand and pulling towards me with the other hand that is underneath his chin. Just like that. So we're holding for 30 to 60 seconds. If they pull away from you, lessen the stretch. They should be comfortable and quiet in it just like this. I don't know if you can see, Olson's eyes are soft. His ears are relaxed and listening to me. And you're going to hold that for 30 to 60 seconds. Good boy. Always tell your horse they were good. Always, always, always. Praise, praise, praise. All right, and we're going to go into the next stretch. So the next one is the jaw pull. So for this one, we're going to be grabbing the ramus of the mandible. So that's this part right here on their jawbone. And we're going to be pulling slightly forward. Staying within pain-free. So we're grasping on either side bilaterally. So left and right sides. And we're pulling towards you. Olson's a little difficult to do because he's got so much hair, but you're just pulling the mandible towards you gently. Good. Boy, holding that for 15 to 30 seconds as well. as I'm demoing these stretches, I'm not going to be actually holding them for the full 30 to 60 seconds, just for time's sake. Gotta be out here all day otherwise. Okay, so the next stretch we're going to be talking about is a lateral jaw stretch. So this is used to help stretch the muscles involved in mastication. They're also involved when you have your horse's bit in their mouth. So we're going to be stretching these muscles. For this one, you need to be very careful because we are putting our hands in the horse's mouth and near their teeth. So we need to be very, very careful that we don't get bitten. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to have one hand on the top of their mouth, on top of their jaw, and the other one on the bottom here. We're going to stick our finger in the corner of their mouth here, just like we do when we go to put the bit in where there's no teeth. And with my bottom hand of his chin, I'm going to push away from me and pull towards me with the top one. It's okay if they chew as they do this. The idea is just to encourage them to move their jaw to the side. So for example, if we were doing this on ourselves, it would look like this. This is essentially what we're doing, but onto them. You see how I'm pushing my jaw to the side and then I am stretching out the muscles. So you're going to do this both sides. Holding for 30 to 60 seconds. So next is the Atlanto occipital stretch. So we're placing one hand on their withers and the other on their nasal bone. So the nasal bone is right here, kind of where the halter is supposed to sit. We don't want to press down too low because as we come into the soft part of their nose, this bone here becomes more cartilage-like and can be easily broken. That's also why if your horse has a flash, that it should not be too low because if it's done up too tightly when it's that low, it can break the bone. Thank you. Right. All right, so Atlanto occipital stretch is next. So we're bringing one hand onto the withers. So my right hand is going onto his withers right here. My left hand is going right onto his nasal bone. Higher up, better. Like obviously don't go this far up because then you can't make his head dip, but just above the halter so you're not shoving their halter into their face. This hand on the withers is just stabilizing, and the hand on the nasal bone is going to press their chin towards their chest. Olson's not a big fan of this one. Good boy. And you're holding that for 15 to 30 seconds or 60 to 30. Okay, so next we're going into the neck flexor stretch. So you can stand on a stool if you need to, or you can use a treat to encourage your horse to raise their head up and then slightly to the side. If you go straight up, the dorsal spinous processes of the vertebrae, so that's these on the horse. They're called SPs on people, but these right along here, along the very, very top of their spine. If you don't turn their head slightly to the side, those will approximate. They'll come together, and then you can't get an effective stretch because they're getting stuck there. So if you rotate, you're rotating the vertebrae also. They are able to move as much as possible. So we're going to bring their head up, slightly to the side, to stretch out the side of their neck. You can stand beside them. You can do this in front of them with a treat. I prefer to do it from beside them. So Olson's head is right above my shoulder right now. I'm going to turn him slightly to the left or to the right. So make sure he's got a little bit of rotation here. So rotate him so you can see better. Okay, so we've got his head and neck straight right now. So we don't want to lift his head up, because then his dorsal spinous processes will get stuck. So we're going to rotate, hand underneath the chin, and we're going to lift. Just until we start to feel a little bit of a stretch, a little bit of resistance in the movement. You don't want to push past that either and overstretch them. And again, pay attention to them. If they start to throw their head around, that means they don't like what you're doing and need to dial it back a little bit. Even if all you can do is that with your horse for right now, that's fine. Do whatever they're comfortable with. The idea is to eventually really get that stretch in. You're going to hold it for 15 to 30 seconds, And you're gonna do this one bilaterally. So that means both sides. So rotate this way now, and lift up. Holding for 30 to 60 seconds. Next, we have the neck extensor stretch. So again, you can use a treat for this one. We're gonna grab some hay. And what you're gonna do is kind of ask your horse to bow. So bringing their nose in between their limbs. So first, you're gonna bring them in between their hooves. Good boy. You're gonna hold that for 30 to 60 seconds, or as long as you can. Then next, so that is the least amount of intense stretch. That is the most relaxed stretch. That one stretches the whole top line, so it's the easiest. It's the least concentrated, we'll say. So then we do that. So the one in between their hooves to get the entire top line stretched. And then the next one is in between their knees. This stretches them from their neck all the way to their sacrum, or to some of the back. And then the next one is the hardest. We're bringing their nose to their sternum. That's right in here, right to their chest. That is going to be the most intense stretch. It is just concentrating on the muscles of the neck. All right, we're going to give him that handful of hay because he was a great sport for that. Good boy. And next, we're going to be doing a lateral neck flexor stretch. The next one is a lateral neck flexor stretch. Again, we're going to be standing beside them. So you're going to stand with your back to their shoulder, just like this. And then your hand closest to their body is going to come around their face. Opposite hand furthest from their body is going to support the other side of their face. And then you're just going to bring them around to you in a hug. This one as well you can use with a treat. And you want to kind of direct their nose around to you, but then also down towards their feet. Again, so we're rotating the vertebrae so that their transverse vertebral processes don't get stuck. So their TVPs run along the side of their neck. Thank you for turning your head, Olsen. Good boy. Those are the bony ridges that you can feel along the side of their neck, along the side of your own. So we need to make sure that they're coming down, around and down towards their feet. So Olsen just did a lovely thing for us to show you there. So he decided to turn his butt as I was trying to bring him into that stretch. So if you're having difficulty getting your horse to stay still in this stretch, you can push them up against a wall or have someone else stand quietly at their butt. Don't be mean to them. Make sure no one gets kicked. Just to help stabilize their hips so that they can't swing over and stop the stretch from happening. So Olsen's favorite way to stretch is to the left. He does not like to stretch to the right. But we're going to give it a try as much as we can. Good boy. He's still turning his hip. I don't have a wall that I can use. Okay, so next we're going to move into the shoulder flexor stretch. So this is one where we have to start in hoof pick position first. So I'm going to be shoulder to shoulder with her, facing her butt. I'm going to pick up her limb as if I was going to pick up her feet. I'm going to wait, make sure she's comfortable, balanced. You can see she's adjusting her back feet. I'm going to watch, make sure she's good. And now I'm going to bring the limb forward. I'm going to keep her lower limb pressed against my thigh, because if I leave it loose, then she can swing it and she could possibly kick me, and I don't want that. So I'm going to bring it against my thigh and slightly flex it as well so that she can't bring it into me and kick me. So we're keeping her limb in anatomical alignment here. I'm not bringing her knee out to the side or into the middle, keeping it in line with the rest of her body. And I'm just walking it backwards a little bit. So I'm going to go back to neutral for a second. We're going to replay that. And then watch as she stretches out her shoulder. So you're going to hold that for 15 to 30 seconds. We're supporting underneath the carpus. That's the knee joint here. So that is your shoulder flexor stretch. It is a flexor stretch because we're stretching the flexing muscles. So the shoulder, her humerus is here, or sorry, her scapula is here, her humerus is here. So when the shoulder flexes, the humerus is coming this way. These are approximating. So the flexor muscles are right in here. So that is our shoulder flexor stretch. The next one we're going into is our shoulder extensor stretch. We're stretching of the muscles that are responsible for extension. So we're starting into a position again, shoulder to shoulder. Doing these all bilaterally as well. And if your horse has an injury, you're starting on the unaffected side first. So that's the side that is not injured, as long as you've been given the okay to stretch. So hoof pick position, we're waiting until she's comfortable. I have one hand supporting the carpet, the other is at her fetlock. And I'm going to gently bring the limb back towards her back foot while bringing the hoof down towards the ground. Cleo is not very cooperative with this stretch. She does not like the shoulder extensor stretch at all. See if I can get her to do it on the other limb. It's a little bit better. So that's the idea. Honestly, I've been working on this for years with her, and all I can really do is kind of just hold it in a relaxed position. I don't know why it freaks her out because she's not in any pain. There, good girl. Just takes a little bit to relax into it. Your shoulder extensor stretch, elbow flexor stretch, carpal and fetlock extensor stretch as well. So that stretches all of those, all the muscles crossing those structures all in one. You can flex the fetlock as well for a deeper stretch. So to do that, you're going into that hoof pick position, bringing the knee down towards and then flexing the fetlock. So we're in neutral, and we're going to flex that fetlock to increase the stretch. Now we have shoulder adductor stretch. So we're going to be abducting the shoulder away from the midline of the body. So bringing it away from her midline to stretch the adductor muscles that bring the shoulder towards the body. So for that one again, shoulder to shoulder, hoof pick position. Resting her knee up here on my thigh so that she can't kick me, so it's nice and secure, it can't go anywhere. And then my inside hand closest to her body is going to go on the inside of her shoulder. You see my hand here just on the inside of her elbow. Lower hand is supporting at the fetlock. It's not moving the limb out to the side at all. It's just keeping the lower limb for the knee down in line, lined up underneath the elbow, the left and on here. So with my inside hand, it is bringing pressure out towards me laterally, away from her body. This hand neutral here is just relaxed. It's just supporting her leg. And you're going to hold that stretch for 30 to 60 seconds. So that is our shoulder adductor stretch. Now we're going to move into the shoulder abductor stretch, which is just the opposite. Now we're stretching the abduction muscles, which bring the shoulder away from her body. So that's when we're doing those leg yields and we're reaching out to the side. Those are the muscles that we're stretching and we're really focusing on. Same with those adduction muscles. So the first to step out in your leg yield is your abduction, then to come back in is your adduction. So if you're a dressage rider and you're struggling with your leg yields, you really get them to stretch over. Some of these abduction and adduction stretches would be fantastic to help improve that range of motion and therefore improve your leg yield reach. So we're doing our abduction stretch. We're in hoof pick position. Her knee is again rested against my thigh so she can't kick me. And now my inside hand is going to be supporting at her fetlock. Be very careful with this stretch because you kind of get yourself a little tangled up with your arm into their limb. So that is how we're going to hold her lower limb. And then my outside hand is going to press on her shoulder here, moving it in towards her body. Careful not to push your horse over. So gentle pressure at first, just gradually increase it until you feel the stretch and the resistance. You're holding that for 15 to 30 seconds. Good girl, please. Now we're going into our elbow extensor stretch. So the elbow extensor stretch starts out very similarly to the shoulder flexor stretch. The only difference here is that when we get to that position out in front, we're lifting up at their carpus to stretch out the muscles back here at their elbow. So we're going into hoof kick position, shoulder to shoulder. Her carpus is against my thigh, so she can't try to kick. We're going in to that shoulder flexor stretch position. Instead of walking out backwards, we're just going to lift up here. You can really see her range of motion is amazing. You can really see how those muscles in there are getting stretched out, and that one on her. Next, we're going to be doing carpal or fetlock flexor stretch. This one's really, really important that you support underneath their carpus. Because if you don't support underneath their carpus, you can sprain the ligaments that help support the back of their carpus. Please don't do that. I see a lot of people doing this stretch without supporting the carpus, and it scares me because you do so much damage and you're just putting extra strain on that knee. It's like when you go over and do a hamstring stretch, if you don't put a little bend into your knees, the back of your knee hurts. So just like with them, we need to make sure that we're supporting their carpus, putting a little bit of bend into their knee so that we're not overstretching the structures in the back of that joint. So again, hoof kick position, shoulder to shoulder. So this is when things get a little weird because we're going to have to do a little switch, a little flip. So now we're going to bring inside hand to the fetlock, outside hand back behind the knee, inside hand cups underneath the fetlock, and brings it out in front. Make sure you don't stand directly in front of them because then they can kick you. So you want to make sure you're kind of out of the side, supporting yourself properly, kind of come into a squat, making sure their limbs properly aligned. Her knee is slightly bent. I'm supporting underneath her carpus, underneath her fetlock. And then I'm going to bring her toe, now that she's comfortable, into extension. So I don't do this position. I'm just getting out of the way so you can see. So you're right here next to their limb. Hand underneath their toe, while underneath the carpus supporting. Back to hoof kick position. So that one you gotta be really, really careful that you don't accidentally step down onto your fingers somehow. That one you have to be very, very careful with your hand placement and positioning and your balance. So now we're going to be doing a lateral trunk stretch. This is kind of similar to the lateral neck flexor stretch, but this one is going to be involving the entire body, including the back muscles. So this one we're trying to really bring her nose all the way down to her hoof on the same side, on the ipsilateral side. So ipsilateral is same side, contralateral is the opposite side to whatever side you're referring to. So using some hay, we're going to encourage Cleo. She's kind of against the wall here. She has a bit of a hard time focusing with this one. We're going to kind of encourage her to stretch around, bringing her nose down towards the ground. Your horse isn't very food motivated either, though. That's when you can also run into issues with this. It goes one way or the other. Your horse is either too food aggressive and is trying to push you down to get the food for the stretches, or your horse doesn't care like Cleo and it's just like la-di-da-da, what's this on the ground? I want to sniff this piece of dirt. So that is your lateral stretch. Thank you, Cleo. Good girl. Your lateral trunk stretch. And now we've got spinal flexor stretch. So we're starting at the withers. Tie her back up. So starting at the withers, you're going to kind of make an upside down taco with your hand. Along her spine, you're going to do a little bit of pressure, just enough that she dips down. If they're twitching at all underneath it, lessen your pressure. That can also be an indication that they just have sore muscles, which is an indication to give me a call. And these stretches will also help decrease that tension. So I'm going to show you from this side so you can see a little bit better. So we're just applying a little bit of pressure either side of her back, just so she dips down underneath it, all the way to her hips. Then the next one you're going to do right after. So these two kind of come together as a pair. You never want to do the flexor stretch without the extensor stretch. You can do the extensor stretch without the flexor stretch, but not vice versa. If you do the flexor stretch, you have to end with the extensor stretch. So, spinal extensor stretch. Cleo's getting to the perfect position for me here. She knows what's up. You're just tickling along the bottom of their stomach, along their sternum. Be very, very careful if your horse is girthy, doesn't like their stomach being touched because they could kick you. So we're lifting or scratching underneath their sternum to encourage their back to come up. I'll go to the other side so you can see. So this one you're going to do for 30 to 60 seconds or as long as they can handle. You can take a few breaks in between. Same with the flexor. Just keep doing it 30 to 60 seconds. Keeping your dip down. Take a break if they need. Finish with the extensor stretch. Next, we're going into hip flexor and tarsal flexor stretch. So we're going into hoof pick position, shoulder to shoulder. Now we're working on the back limb. So pick up their limb. Give them a second to relax. Rest their leg on your thigh. That's what you normally do when you pick out their hooves. I use my leg to help me stretch them. I just put one hand up on the tarsus. So that's back here. And stretch their leg back straight out behind them while also bringing the hoof down towards the ground. Show that one again. So one hand on fetlock, other on the tarsus to stabilize, their leg resting on your thigh, and down and towards the ground. This stretches out your tarsal flexors, right here, and your hip flexors. Next is hip extensor / stifle flexor stretch. This one's another difficult one with positioning, so be very, very careful. So, shoulder to shoulder, hoof pick position. Lifting their foot up, supporting underneath the fetlock with one hand and underneath their toe with the other. And then you're going to step out to the side in a lunge. Support your forearms on your thighs and bring their limb underneath them and towards their opposite forelimb. So you need to support underneath the fetlock and underneath their toe. Keeping yourself up off of your knees. Do not squat down, sit down on the floor. Don't kneel on the floor. Keep yourself in a squat. So when you're in a squat, you can easily get up because you're still on your feet. And then you're resting your forearms on your thighs because their hind limb is heavy. It's just impossible to do without resting your forearms on your thigh for support and balance. And it'll strain your wrists. Honestly, you should be out of breath by the time you're done stretching your horse's entire body. It's quite the workout even for yourself. So that is our hip extensor / stifle flexor stretch. The next one we have is stifle extensor. So this is separate from the hip and tarsal one. It's kind of going in the same starting, but it's a little bit more complicated. This is another difficult position one. And this one you have to be very, very, very careful that you don't get kicked. It's probably the most high risk one for getting kicked. Especially since horses tend to be quite sore in their stifles as well because it's such a complex and weak joint. They tend to get pretty sore in there, and if they also have conformation issues like Cleo does, you need to be very, very, very careful. So shoulder to shoulder, hoof pick position, lift their limb up, rest on your thigh, get them organized and relaxed. So now we're going to take it off our thigh. We're holding underneath their tarsus on the anterior aspect, so the aspect of their leg that's closest to their head. Then we're going to flip. We're going to turn around. So as we do that, you're bringing your hand over to switch. So we're going over and in to switch. Woo! And that is how you're going to flip around to grab their leg for this position. Support with both hands underneath the tarsus. keeping this part of their leg parallel to the ground as much as possible. And walking it backwards a little bit and lift slightly up. Just enough that you feel a little bit of resistance, not too much. And then to get out of this one, it's not exactly safe to go back into hoof pick position. You're going to push their leg away from you without pushing them over. That was a bit more dramatic just to show, but you're going to set their leg down and push it away and step away as quickly as you can, just in case they decide to like do that thing after you pick them up like they tend to. So just like the shoulder, we have hip adduction and abduction stretches. So again, as I mentioned before, these will really, really be great for improving your lateral range of motion for your lateral work. Okay. So, same thing again. We're starting in hoof pick position. I'm just going to turn her so you can see better. Turn her face so she's looking at Olsen. Okay. So, again, shoulder to shoulder, hoof pick position. We're doing the adduction stretch. So that means we're bringing their limb away. So it's kind of the same position as one of the ones from before. Sorry. So hoof pick position, shoulder to shoulder, bringing your hands underneath the fat lock. You're going to stack up their limbs underneath her hip. Just like this, so like she's an accordion. So that if I need to, I can lift it up and it just completely flexes. So we're holding in that position. We're doing the ADD stretch. So one hand on the fat lock, other on the inside of her thigh, keeping the lower leg in line. I'm just pushing over with the hand on the inside of her thigh. Good girl. And that is our adduction stretch. So the next one we're going to be going into is our hip abductor stretch. So we're going to be bringing the leg towards her midline. So again, shoulder to shoulder, hoof pick position. Bringing their leg underneath them again, stacking it up. Inside hand supports underneath the fat lock, outside hand to the thigh. Push it in gently. Be very, very careful not to tip them over. Keeping that leg in line and stacked. Now we have our tarsal extensor stretch. So we're going to be stretching out the muscles at the back of the tarsus. So we're going to shoulder to shoulder, hoof pick position. Stacking the limbs again. And flexing as much as you can. Wait until you feel that resistance. Don't overdo it. Kind of follow the movement of their joints. And you're holding that for 30 to 60 seconds. All right, now we're going to go into a few last extra stretches. Some tail stretches and the gluteal stretch. Leah's bringing her butt over here for us. So, as we're standing behind the horse, you need to be very, very careful. Make sure that they know where you are at all times. So keep a hand on them. Kind of be right up next to them. Or so far away that they can't kick you at all. So yeah, for that gluteal scratch, you can stand directly behind them or off to the side. And you're just going to scratch on either side, just a couple inches above their tail. So she lifts her butt up. I hope you could see that in the video. That also involves, it stretches the glutes, and it also involves the back. So it kind of gets a good chunk of the top line minus the neck. So next we're going to go into some tail stretches. These are the last of our stretches. So we're going to go out to the side first. So our lateral tail stretch. Gently to the side. You're going to feel them start to lean away from you, which is fine. It's good. Oh, Leah's really, really stretching herself out. She's also rotating her neck to her side. Really stretching out that entire left side. Back to neutral, do it to the other side, same thing. As you're releasing it, because she's leaning. She's pulling me. If I just let her go, you can see she kind of tipped over. Sorry, Cleo. Just release it really slowly so they don't fall over. And the last one, to realign all the fibers that you just moved to the sides. We're just going to do a straight back stretch of the tail. See, she's stretching forward into it by lowering her head and neck and pulling forward. She just pulled me forward completely. And gently come out of it. And there you go. That is your full body stretching for the horse. So now you know how to stretch your whole horse. They're going to be much, much better off for it and much happier about it. Yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you so, so much for watching. Cleo, Olsen, and Red and I all had a great time doing this for you. We hope to see you soon after all this lockdown crap is over. Stay safe and have a good winter.